Good evening, everybody. We good to go? Great. Welcome to tonight's meeting and welcome to Port Melbourne. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands we are meeting on today. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. I remind attendees that any member of the public addressing Council must extend due courtesy and respect to Council and the processes under which it operates. And please take direction from myself as Chair whenever you're called upon to do so. Speakers must remain respectful and statements or questions must not be defamatory or offensive. And please make sure those questions are not aimed at embarrassing a councillor or a member of Council staff. These questions or comments must also pertain to a matter within the powers of Council. Tonight's presiding officer is the CEO, Peter Smith. We have all our councillors here this evening. From Lake Ward, we have Councillor Copsey, Councillor Sirikoff and Councillor Bond. Good evening. From Gateway Ward, we have Councillor Consolo, myself, Councillor Martin, and from Canal Ward, we have Councillor Crawford, Councillor Baxter and Councillor Clark. Thank you, everybody. Councillors, I move now to item number 1, which is apologies, but there being none. I move to item number 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting on the 2nd of March. And those minutes have been circulated to you, councillors. Do you have any question in relation to those minutes? There being none, I'll now ask a mover for that motion. Councillor Deputy Mayor Baxter, and seconded by Councillor Martin. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Councillors, now moving to item number 3, which is declaration of conflict of interest. Do you wish to make any declarations this evening? Let's move to item 4, which is public question time and submissions. Joining us now, submissions should be kept to 3 minutes, obviously, and we've got a combination this evening of virtual submissions and those of you that joined us here tonight in person. We'll start with the virtual one, and I call upon Simon Rashley submitting a question to Council. Simon, good evening. If you could just state your name and your suburb, that would be fantastic.
Good evening, Mayor. This is Simon Rashley from St Kilda. Thank you for allowing me to ask the question. I'm here from Eildon Road. My question relates to the proposed sale of 3 early learning centres. In previous council meetings, we've been advised that council officers have been in dialogue with the Victorian Department of Education and Training and the VSBA on the building blocks grants and have been informed that these centres would be eligible for funding. We note that the current round building blocks applications for grants close on 15th of March for the inclusion grant, close on the 20th of March for the planning grant, close on the 27th of March for expansion, integration, modular and new facilities grants. After these, the applications for the current round of improvement grants for early learning facility upgrades and minor infrastructure grants will close May 22nd, less than 10 weeks from now. We note that Council believe that the centres can only be viable with support from other levels of government and that the centres face an uncertain future without that funding. Given all this, can Council officers please provide an update on their progress in applying for these grants to date? And if there's not been any applications submitted to date or being prepared, can Council officers please outline their plans and timelines for applying for the available grants?
Thanks very much, Simon. I asked Tony Keenan to respond to the question, or questions, I should say.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Yes, officers have made an application to Victorian Schools Building Authority on 9th of March, and we're awaiting a response.
Tony, any further details on the sub-grants that was detailed in Simon's question there, or is it not appropriate to go into detail around which grants we've applied for? But any further colour you can provide on the categories of grants?
Through you, Mayor, it would be inappropriate whilst we're in discussions to have a public discussion about the nature of the application and the individual grants.
Thank you for that clarification. And obviously we don't want to do anything to place in jeopardy any of those grant submissions. But thank you, Simon, for the question. I call upon Claire Byrne to submit a question to Council also. Claire, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Welcome. If you could just state your name and your suburb, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's Claire Byrne. I'm from St Kilda West. I'm the chair of the Committee of Management at Elwood Children's Centre. Since being informed of Council's intention to sell the property at which our centre has provided childcare and kindergarten services for the past 37 years, I've listened to repeated promises from Council that they wanted a genuine consultation, particularly with the 3 centres slated for closure. When it comes to receiving the timely provision of information that will mean our centre can have the meaningful and informed engagement that the Local Government Act of 2020 requires, I'm here tonight to remind Council that its actions speak much louder than words. As you will all know, it took me months of almost weekly follow-up to obtain maintenance figures for our centre. Even after listening at a recent council meeting that maintenance figures for the past 3 years were easily obtainable, I had to escalate my request to the Mayor, CEO, and even our local MPs before receiving these figures. By the close of Have Your Say submissions at the end of February, our centre was still yet to receive all the information we requested back in December. Even though our centre was allowed an additional week to make a submission, we still hadn't received all the information by that deadline either. Most recently, I've been following up on queries regarding the asset management of 46 Tennyson Street in Elwood, specifically a copy of Port Phillip's most recent National Asset Management Framework Assessment, as well as the Asset Management Plan for our building. These documents should be readily available. I initially asked for this information 3 months ago. I have made numerous follow-ups since that time, and most recently 2 reminders to officers, copy to the CEO and the Mayor. I had received no response until I put this public question in today, this afternoon, and at 5:21 this evening, I have finally received a response to those questions. So my question tonight is a little bit not needed anymore, but I would also just like to point out that I think you'll agree that I have been very patient. I have also been really persistent. I want to point out that I am exasperated with how hard it is to get information out. And most of all, I'm exhausted. I'm a working mother of 2 small children. I volunteer my time to assist in the running of our centre. And I do this to support the community, which is your community. And I'm doing all of that at the tail end of a pandemic that has added untold amounts of stress. And in addition to all that, I find myself trying to participate in the community engagement process that you have started. And here I am with another evening of my time having to make a public attempt to ask you for information that should be readily available. So my question was to provide the information on the requested asset management, but I acknowledge that it has been provided at 5:20 this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't think we need to go to an officer for that, but we do obviously apologise for the experience that you've encountered there. That's not the way we like things to happen. I'm sure there's a number of factors involved, but apologies for that. But I'll give the officers an opportunity if they wish to respond, but they don't have to. CEO, do you think it's appropriate to do so? I think we're good.
Through you, Mayor, I'll just reiterate the apologies to Claire. I did see that one go through and we were chasing responses. I thought the response had been provided earlier than tonight, so I'm disappointed that you only got it tonight and that you've had to come again tonight.
And, yeah, very sorry about that again. I call upon Rebecca Sanders submitting a question to Council. Rebecca, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
That's great news. If you could just state your name and your suburb, and please feel free to commence when your 3 minutes does.
Sure, it's Rebecca Sanders and I'm from Elwood. So this is in relation to the consultation period for the proposed sale of the 3 centres. So we heard from Council last meeting that one of the main reasons for continuing with the sale consultation was allow Council time to negotiate with state and federal funding. The state funding conversation seems to be going on for multiple months. I note that you just answered previously that there has been a submission gone in a few days ago. While all of this is happening and quite delayed, parents, carers and families are all put under undue stress. And I want to point out as well that opportunities to lobby for federal candidates to put in an election commitment is really dwindling. So I guess the point is there a rationale with, the timeline and whether there actually is opportunity here to be able to lobby for that federal funding, because the candidates are really needing to put in their requests as we speak, and many are not willing to do so until they know what state funding is going to be available. So I guess my question is, what's the timeline that your expectations are, given that you have decided to continue this process because you wanted to be able to lobby to the state and federal funding while this process was still in place? So I guess, what's the timeline here, and do we feel like this is actually going to plan?
Thanks for your question, and thanks for dialing in tonight. I'll ask Tony Keenan to answer that question, those questions for you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I'm not sure the reason Council, this reason provided for continuing with the consultations was to allow for negotiation with state and federal funding. My recollection, the minutes actually showed the Council asked us to expedite the consultation. The main things that need to happen are the further consultations with the Committee of Management Centres. Once they've concluded, we'll be able to bring a report to Council. In relation to state funding, as I said earlier, we've put in an application, and in terms of funding that's available, that's through the Victorian Schools Building Authority building block grants. There are no Commonwealth funds available other than a funding for centres in highly disadvantaged areas, which Port Phillip would not be. So then we have been providing information last week to some candidates. Federal candidates have asked for further information, and we're preparing federal advocacy asks for the three candidates, all the candidates in the forthcoming election.
Thanks, Tony, and I'll just add to that also that all doors are open, and the council office has been doing a good job replying to any questions that are received and discussions to be had through federal candidates. So certainly the officers are doing it, and at a political level, councillors are doing that also. So obviously funding opportunities don't always sit only in an election cycle. They sit all the time in terms of when governments are sitting, and after election cycles also. So those avenues are being pursued, and that's being well supported by officers. I call upon Natalie Davey now, speaking to item 11.1, which is the Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve Master Plan. Natalie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
No, thanks for joining us. Just get you to state your name and your suburb. That'd be great. Thank you.
My name is Natalie Davey, and my suburb is Elwood. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Elsternwick Park Association as president. The EPA has consulted with the Council of Port Phillip for 5 years on the agreement to contribute to the funding of the Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve. We applauded Council's decision in March 2018 that agreed to an Elsternwick Park Nature MOU to ensure the City of Port Phillip and Bayside City Council partnership continue to jointly enact and co-fund the master plan for the Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve, which was in March 2020. In 2020, the EPA made a submission on the annual council plan and budget for 2020-21. The Mayor's letter of reply confirmed Council remained committed to the partnership and had allocated $1.16 million over the next 4 years for flood mitigation and to improve environmental outcomes. Our understanding to date is the Council, Port Phillip, has yet to contribute any funds to the Bayside EPNR Master Plan project and formally recognise the costs of planning and development works and realise major water management outcomes for the Council of Port Phillip. Nevertheless, the Bayside City Council's project stages of constructions are well underway, with the completion of the chain of ponds and design of the wetlands start in 2020-23. The EPA is greatly supported by residents of the Council of Port Phillip. Many who are members actively volunteer time and skills for park activities, regularly visit and highly value the vision of the reserve. Residents support the goals to create a unique environment and diverse habitats, community amenity for people to connect with nature, Indigenous history, cleaner water quality of Elster Creek and hence Port Phillip Bay, and of course flood mitigation. We believe it is now a matter of urgency that the Council of Port Phillip commits to, adopts and negotiates with Bayside Council to contribute funding for the EP&R Master Plan. By doing so, Council can meet its existing water-sensitive city targets for integrated water management outcomes of improved water quality, capacity for water harvesting, reduced potable water use and pollution load. We consider it critical that the EP&R Master Plan next stage is not delayed. Council of Port Phillip can commit to act and reduce the high levels of pollutants flowing into the bay, harmful to biodiversity, habitat and people, and capture the water flowing in Elster Creek to harvest for reuse in public open spaces. The master plan itself was designed and reviewed by professional experts in sustainable water management, flooding, habitat and biodiversity to ensure the plan can deliver the Council of Port Phillip's targets and outcomes, which we have detailed in our written submission to Council today. The Council report only proposes to offer an amount of up to $80,000 as a contribution to the project management and design of the wetlands and stormwater harvesting components of the Bayside City Council Master Plan, which is estimated to cost $320,000. Given the significant benefits to the Council of Port Phillip and the community, and the delayed contribution to the recent Master Plan costs of planning, design and works for Stages 1, it would be advantageous as a partner to substantiate and fund the estimated full cost of the next stage. Stage 2 of construction of the wetlands and stormwater components are estimated to be $12 million. Bayside Council has so far allocated $9 million to the project. The EPA assumes the remaining...
Just get you to come to the end if you could. The councillors have the submission in front of them, obviously, Natalie, but perhaps if you just reiterate the points at the end of your statement, that would be great.
Yeah, we therefore ask that the Council of Port Phillip continue its commitment to the EP&R Master Plan in accordance with the 21st of March 2018 resolution, initiate discussions with Bayside City Council for an agreement of the funding contribution partnership and act in partnership to contribute no less than $320,000 for the 2022-23 and further funds towards achieving COP's targets as detailed in the EP&R Master Plan for the project duration.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
No, thank you. And I now call upon Helen Halliday speaking to item 11.1. Also, welcome, Helen. Just state your name and your suburb. That'd be great.
Thank you. I'll try to remember that you're Mr. Mayor. It's Helen Halliday. I live in Balaclava. I've been involved in Elsternwick Park issues for the past 10 years, since 2013 when the first wetland was established. I'm speaking about the master plan and the recommendations that have been made in the report before the Council on this matter. It is timely and perhaps beyond the time that the COP addresses how it should be responsible for its contribution to the delivery of the conversion of an old golf course into a world standard park, which is expected to cost in the order of $20 million. The report acknowledges the professionalism in the steps that have been taken by Bayside to date. The report identifies all 5 aspects to be measured in moving to the next stage of the development and before the Council allocates significant funding to the project. The issue of downstream flooding has apparently been largely resolved with the proposed diversion drain, leaving the main outcomes in the hands of Melbourne Water. Many of the outcomes for the COP community are axiomatic due to the proximity of the new nature reserve to the people of Elwood, Balaclava and Ripponlea, and includes numerous health benefits offered by way of public amenity and improved biodiversity. This contribution needs to be identified and monitorised. Others are speaking on the value of replacing potable water with recycled water if the city is to meet its pollution reduction and water replacement targets set out in the 2010 Water Plan. the potential contribution also needs to be identified and monetarised. The City needs to assure the City of Bayside of its good intentions. Such good intentions are not reflected in item 3.5. This should read as a general statement of commitment. Instead, it reads as a list of demands and cascading uses for the relatively small amount of money that's been budgeted to date for work, which may need to be done outside the city limits, but which are all within the catchment of the City of Port Phillip. It should be acknowledged with the final budget being subject, this should be acknowledged with the final budget being described and being subject to the work proposed to be done under item 3.4. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you, Helen Halliday. Also speaking to item 11.1 is Jack Halliday. Welcome, Jack. If you just state your name and suburb, that would be great.
Jack Halliday from Balaclava. Mr Mayor, Councillors and Officers. Council's original water plan towards a water-sensitive city was published in 2010. It set targets for 2020 in three main areas. First, reducing mains water use for irrigating parks and gardens. Second, by reducing the pollution loads of suspended solids, phosphorus and nitrogen going into the bay. And third, and most important, by developing alternative water sources from stormwater and rainwater. This can be substituted for mains water and, most significantly, moving it through wetlands cleans up the harmful pollutants and makes it fit for irrigating parks and gardens. Importantly, the targets for reducing pollutant loads were based on achieving best practice environmental management guidelines for cleaning up this water by 2066, a long time frame. Council's first major stormwater project took place in 2013, involving the same consultants, E2 Design, who'd been involved in the 2020 plan, and with the aid of a Commonwealth Government grant, Bayside and Port Phillip Council jointly developed a stormwater scheme in Ulster Creek, expected to produce up to 100 megalitres of alternative water, split three ways between the golf course and the two councils. In practice, it has not been possible to achieve the 30 megalitres anticipated for Port Phillip. In 2018, new targets for alternative water were set again with E2 Design to reach 45 megalitres by 2021 from Elster Creek and Elmer Park combined, and an extra 70 megalitres from Albert Park Lake by 2023-24, which had been budgeted at 4.1 million. However, Albert Park wasn't proceeded with, and the report we're looking at tonight proposes that Council should obtain an additional 70 megalitres from the Elsternwick Park project to effectively substitute for Albert Park Lake. At present, Council is producing around 30 to 35 megalitres of stormwater and will enter 23-24 around 80 megalitres below the targets that has been set, without having reduced potable water usage, and the reported pollutant reduction loads overall suggest that less than half the targets which were set have been reached. Other smaller water harvesting possibilities would be examined, but in our view, it is very important that Council secures as much water as possible from the Elsternwick Park project while this opportunity is available. Given the construction timetable, even obtaining that 70 megalitres wouldn't be enough to quite reach the target, but it would keep Council closer to the 2066 trajectory. Thank you.
Thank you. We've received a number of further submissions to be read out on behalf of the members of the public. I will call each name in terms of the person that submitted it from the member of the public and refer to the Manager of Governance and Organisational Performance to read them out for us. The first one is from Adrian Jackson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, this is a follow-up question to the question raised at the 2nd March Council meeting.
Could you just turn that level up a little bit for us? Thanks. Go ahead, sorry, pardon me.
This is a follow-up to the question raised on the 2nd March Council meeting regarding music events held at Catania Gardens. Can Council provide statistical evidence of the benefits they claim the other community members get, e.g. arts, from local events? Is Council aware that in nearby Armstrong Street, There is a downturn in business as concert attendees mostly park and depart at the end of the concert and buy nothing. Why does Council talk up support for St Kilda arts community at the expense of residential ratepayers?
Thank you for reading that out, and I ask Lauren Bilkow to help us with the answer, please.
Through you, Mayor.
Oh, sorry, Kylie Bennett.
That's fine. Through you, Mayor. Council collects data regarding the economic impact of our events program in a variety of ways, and the intent and purpose of holding such events to benefit our wider community. I understand that Council has received no formal complaints in relation to its events program from Middle Park traders. Many of our traders are highly supportive of events and wish to see these and other activations increase, given the patronage that it encourages to our activity centres. Our events program is not limited to the arts, and it also doesn't just cover St Kilda. We work with a wide range of providers and incorporate a wide range of locations throughout the year.
Thank you, Kylie Bennett. Peter Holland's also submitted a question for us to consider.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. In August 2021, Council approved a motion moved by Councillor Bond to request the CEO to provide a report to Council on the next stage of Council's 2016 Triangle Master Plan and to begin discussions with the state and federal governments about support, including the development of a business case. State MP Martin Foley and Federal MP Josh Burns had previously endorsed this approach, so we can hope for a bipartisan position on our iconic asset. Can Council give us an update on what has happened since August?
Thank you, and I'll now ask Joanne McNeil to help us with that. Joanne, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Great, please go ahead.
Thanks. Officers have undertaken an initial review of the master plan and all of the work, the various technical reports that were prepared at the time, and we've prepared a draft project approach for the next steps in delivering that master plan with the view of leveraging all of that past work and input to move forward into implementation. We've briefed councillors on options to progress the triangle as per the resolution, and we have been asked to undertake some further work prior to bringing back a report to Council. So once that further work has been completed, we will definitely provide a report back to Council in a public meeting for decision about next steps. And in addition to that, we've started discussions with DELP about support for the project. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. I now call upon a question to be read out on behalf of Laura Hill.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The Avenue Children's Centre and Kindergarten is fielding lots of questions and concerns from local families that wish to enrol their child or children at the centre but are hesitant to do so because of the proposal to sell. Our adversely impacted staff are having to spend considerable time explaining the situation and the current state of play to parents. Staff from Eldon Road and Elwood Children's Centre are doing the same. On several occasions, staff have been told by interested parents that council staff have told them not to bother putting their names down on the register for Children's Services waiting list for the 3 affected centres because they are being sold. I have 3 requests. Can Council please share in writing with the affected centres what messaging and information is being provided to the Register for Children's Services waiting list staff? Can Council please publish information on the Register for Children's Services waiting list webpage that clearly states the proposal to sell does not affect potential enrolments at these centres? Can the Council please share the draft copy with the affected centres for input approval before publishing?
Thank you. Tony Keenan, could you help us out with some answers to those questions?
Through you, Mayor, when I saw this question this afternoon, I was alarmed because it's a very serious claim. I immediately investigated, and I can assure Council that I've been guaranteed that there is no chance that Council staff have provided that information. Absolutely 100% guarantee that. If those parents if they care to provide the detail of the staff member they claim said that, I'll investigate absolutely. But until that point, I don't intend to change any notice on the enrolment page on the basis of hearsay. That's a very serious allegation. And if that has, as I said, I investigated today, I'm 100% satisfied that that hasn't happened. But if parents believe that that's happened, if they could email me directly with the name of the staff member who they say said that, and preferably the date, I'll follow it up. But as I said, I don't believe that that's happened at all.
Thank you for taking that so seriously, Tony, and we hope that settles the matter, but if it doesn't, please take Tony's advice. We have a further question that's been submitted by Adrian Jackson in relation to item 10.1, which is the Palais, Theta and Luna Park Precinct Revitalisation, proposed road closure submissions. Could you help us out by reading that out for us?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The question reads, why is Council proposing to spend more ratepayers' funds on the costly Palais Theatre when ratepayers don't even own this state-owned building? The sum proposed is double that proposed by the state government. While the Palais is located in St Kilda, it is a Melbourne, perhaps state resource, not a local resource, and Council only administers the tenant's contract for the state government. Does Council realise that the proposed plaza is locking up more useful car parking and passenger drop-off spots and may end up a haven for undesirables when the plaza is not open?
Great, and Councillor might take that up when we get to that item, and thank you for submitting it. All right, councillors, that concludes item number 3, which was public question time and submissions. It's now your time to shine. Item number 5, councillor question time. Who'd like to ask? Councillor Bond wants to ask a question. Go ahead.
Yes, can I just get an update on the installation or reinstallation of the trampoline into the St Kilda Adventure Playground?
Thank you. Tony Keenan.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, I'm just trying to find my trusty notes.
No, probably just while you do that, obviously this is a commitment we've also made as part of the item at a previous council meeting. So that this, for the council's reference, this is an important update and should be reflected so in the minutes also.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, I have the information. Council officers are nearing completion of preliminary works at the sites and are currently obtaining the quotations for both the required soil works and trampoline installation as per our procurement policy. Although we have not yet received formal quotations, we hope to have both trampolines completed and installed by around the end of April.
Thanks for the update, Tony Keenan. Councillors, any further questions? Peter Martin.
Probably for Mr Keenan.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Probably for Mr Keenan. There's been considerable angst in the soccer or the football community in recent weeks. Football Victoria, in its wisdom, has changed its season dates, so many of the competitions are now commencing in mid-March, but councils like ours, of course, run their winter sports allocation program from the beginning of April. This has meant that some of our local clubs haven't been able to play home games in March. Will Council be able to negotiate with Football Victoria to see if this practice is going to continue in future years? And if this is the case, can Council work with Football Victoria and the clubs to see if it may be possible to perhaps rejig the way we do our winter allocation so that if this is going to be a long-term fixture in soccer, that clubs are able to play their home games from the beginning of the season?
Through you, Mayor, I'd have to
Go ahead, Tony Keenan.
I'd have to take part of that on notice. So I would need to check whether Football Victoria negotiated with us. So I would need to check that with our officers. There are two issues here. One is the current issue around ground maintenance and having a break. And I'm advised that Dana Pritchard is online and can speak to the negotiations with Football Victoria. What I would point out is that it's proposed that one of the pitches in question that has a lot of damage, it's proposed to have artificial or synthetic cover, which would increase the capacity of that ground, the capability of that ground to have more games played. But I'll ask Dana Pritchard to provide further information on discussions with Football Victoria.
Dana Pritchard, can you help us out?
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Welcome.
We have been speaking to, this is an agreed position with Football Victoria, and we have been using this policy for a number of years now, but we can talk to Football Victoria as to whether or not they are going to continue. Our understanding at this point is that they would like to extend the season at both ends if possible. However, that then impacts on our other sporting games, as many of our reserves share a space with cricket and other codes, which means that it makes it difficult for us to extend any seasons for any of the sports because of that, because of the sharing of reserves across the municipality.
Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. Sorry there isn't prior warning on this one, but I just want to take up a question from public. I've seen before that about the 236 bus. When the road closure that's happening outside the South Melbourne market at the moment, the bus, this resident lives, I believe, in Port Melbourne and cannot get to the market. Can a council officer maybe elaborate on when that closure will be finished, and if there's some other provisions around that bus route to get to the market for people who rely on it?
Through you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Kylie Bennett can help. I think we'd take that one on notice.
Yes, through you, Mayor. We'll take that one on notice.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Let's move to item 6, which is the sealing schedule. Councillors, we have no items for sealing tonight, so let's move to item 7, which is petition and joint letters, and we also do not have any petitions or joint letters for tonight's meeting. We now move to items 8 through 13, which is the presentation of reports. Councillors will now move through each one of those reports individually. So let's start with Report 9.1, Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program, reallocation of savings to Point Ormond Playground upgrade. The main officer on this one is Lachlan Johnson. Questions in relation to this report? Councillors, Deputy Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. I know there's information in the report, but can councillors just say, for the purpose of the meeting and anybody watching, when the expected finish date is for the Point Ormond project?
Who could help us out with that one? Lachlan, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, I might ask Council's Coordinator of Open Space, Christopher Cook, who's online, to answer that question.
Thanks, Lachlan, and welcome, Christopher.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The project has been delayed a little and will now be completed by mid-April. The expected completion date is just before the school holidays, mid-April.
Okay, no further questions? In your hands for a mover, Deputy Mayor Baxter and Councillor Crawford to second the motion. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I won't say much except that obviously a lot of projects that have been going through COVID and lockdowns and other disruptions related to COVID have had all sorts of rocky implementations. But it looks as though, in some of them we have overs and in some of them we have unders. But this looks like a very good way for us to get the best value out of our different revenue streams and funding streams for us to deliver the most for the community.
And Councillor Crawford.
Yes, so although there's a delay, I'm looking forward to it being complete. And I did go and walk up the more accessible to the Point Ormond, and now it's much more accessible for people with mobility issues, families and prams. So, yeah, it's definitely worth a look because that area is improving, and looking forward to this being complete.
Thanks very much, Councillor Crawford. Anyone else wish to speak to the report? And Deputy Mayor, do you wish to close? Okay, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Let's move now to item 10.1, which is the Palais, Theta and Luna Park Precinct Revitalisation. Lachlan Johnson's the primary officer on this one again. Questions of the officers? Looking for a mover of the officer's recommendation or something else. Thank you, Councillor Copsey, to move, and Councillor Crawford to second. Thank you, Councillor Copsey.
Thank you. So tonight we're receiving all of the submissions on the proposed road closure that surrounds this project. It's a really important step. I want to thank those who took time to participate in this project, and I'll just note that I'm pleased. I think that we've had some quality submissions made, but it's not looking as though this has generated a huge amount of controversy. And I think that what we're going to end up with in this precinct is going to have some really important safety improvements, but is also going to result in greatly improved amenity and use of that area, which has a lot of potential. So very pleased to be moving through this part of the process this evening, and thanks to those who've participated in the engagement.
Thanks, Councillor Copsey. Councillor Crawford.
A bit of the same as Councillor Copsey. I was pleased to see so few submissions generally, so that the project is not, the community is not against it. And I think what's changed from when this was first proposed, I mean, I think there has been design tweaking, which is fantastic, but I do also think that COVID hit and taking a few car spaces to create new open space has shifted our thinking as a society. So I look forward to this being realised, but I think it's quite, good work. I want to say thank you to the officers for the tweaks and design so that we have got to this uncontroversial and yet effective use of space.
Thanks, Councillor Crawford. And Councillor Bond.
I'd just like to note that the construction is due to commence in May 2020 and it is scheduled for completion by the 30th of November, May 2022, and scheduled for completion by 30th November 2022. So it'll be done over winter in order to have minimal impact on the local traders, and hopefully it's all completed and set up in time for summer next year. And I really look forward to seeing how this space operates and hopefully complements any future plans for the St Kilda Triangle, which was raised earlier tonight through a question from a member of the community. I think these two sites will certainly be very complementary to each other. So look forward to seeing this completed and the removal of, if not all, but part of that Besser block brick wall that I absolutely hate on the Upper Esplanade. I would love to get rid of the whole lot. So.
Thanks, Councillor Bond. Who else would like to speak to the item? Councillor Copsey to close? No. Put that motion, the officer's recommendation has been moved by Councillor Copsey and seconded by Councillor Crawford. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Let's move to item 11.1, Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve Master Plan. The primary officer is Zoe Mahoney. Councillors, questions from you, please. Councillor Crawford.
I'm just interested, as one of the outcomes in the original motion was around removal of pollution for the Bay Health. What is our target currently at the City of Port Phillip for removal of nitrogen into the Bay, and are we meeting it, and how are we meeting it?
Through you, Mayor.
Go ahead. Is it Zoe?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Zoe. Welcome.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. So Council's Act and Adapt Sustainable Environment Strategy sets the targets for water quality, and that includes reduction of nitrogen, phosphorus and suspended solids, which is grit and fine particles. And the targets for reducing nitrogen are to remove 2,022 kilograms per year, or to reduce the amount of nitrogen from Port Phillip by 15% by 2028. Those targets were based on delivering some specific projects, and that included the delivery of a stormwater harvesting scheme at Alba Park Lake. Now that since then, the Alba Park Lake scheme is no longer going ahead, and officers are looking at different alternative stormwater harvesting projects that could help Council reach those water quality and water use goals. So the alternatives that are showing as the most cost effective at the moment as part of officer investigations include expanding the existing stormwater harvesting scheme at Elsternwick Park, looking at new schemes from the Fitzroy Street drain or the Shakespeare Grove drain. So those would help us to get back on track to deliver on not just the nitrogen and other water quality targets, but also the potable water targets that we have. We're currently working with consultants to do investigations into those 3 schemes, and that's due to be completed by June 2022. After that work is completed, we'll present options back to councillors, including the costs, capital and ongoing costs, and the benefits in terms of water quality and water use that we will get from those schemes. And that would inform councillors' decisions on future budgets and any necessary changes to targets that would be scheduled to be completed as part of the review of Council's Act and Adapt strategy in 2023.
So
go ahead.
I was listening, but then I tuned out. Can I just check the number? Was it 2,200 kilograms per year?
2,022 kilograms per year by 2028.
By 2028?
Yes.
Okay. And can I ask one further follow-up question? Do we have a legislative requirement as a council on the Bay to do our part in removing those various substances from the water?
Zoe?
Through you, Mayor, yes, we do. All councils have a requirement under the State Environment Protection Policy to manage stormwater and reduce the impacts of flow, sediment, nutrients, litter and other pollutants that flow into the bay. And this includes some targets to reduce suspended solids by 80%, phosphorus and nitrogen by 45%. And the modelling undertaken for Council's Act and Adapt strategies shows that we're likely to meet those goals somewhere around 2066 or 2070.
Any further questions? Okay, we've got an officer's recommendation, or would you like to move something else? Councillor Crawford?
I would like to move an alternate recommendation.
Go ahead.
So there's quite a bit of change. And so the first part of the change is to 3.4, which authorises a CEO or a delegate to make a contribution to the City of Bayside for a total of $350,000 in the 2022-23 for the following. I'm just going to angle this around. For the extensive and early work on the already completed Masterplan and the conversion of the golf course to open public space, $150K. Towards developing a business case and detailed designs for the wetland stages of Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve Masterplan, and to ensure that the design considers, and this is to the value of $80K, the distribution of water harvesting to the City of Port Phillip and quantified water quality benefits that will contribute towards Council's targets. And then additionally for the future improved public amenity for the Port Phillip community and the protection of and enhanced biodiversity both in the park and in the bay to the value of $120K. And then if we go down, the 3.5 will be replaced with authorises that the remaining funds of $600,000 be held in the Council's forward budget for flood mitigation, water quality and potable water reduction target efforts to retain climate resilient public spaces in Port Phillip, particularly the Elster Creek catchment. Any future allocation of this funding to construction of infrastructure would be subject to a further council decision which would consider the outcome of the business case referred to in 3.4 and any additional infrastructure requirements within Port Phillip. And I think that's the last of the changes.
Thanks, Councillor Crawford. I'm looking for a seconder. Deputy Mayor Baxter has seconded the motion, and I'll ask Councillor Crawford to speak to the motion.
Thank you. So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the enormous effort by both Bayside Council and our community in originally getting Elsternwick Park Reserve to this point. I know that the park, even before any works were being done, has become a much beloved space in our community. And I think particularly in the pandemic, it was a saving grace for many of the locals who don't have backyards or, that was the open space they headed to. And I know the kids loved the BMX bike jumps and things like that. And you know, for me, I know that even walking through there and seeing the swamp hen family grow over, you know, pandemic years was an amazing thing. But I do know that we made a promise to this community back in 2018 as a council and urged Bayside Council to turn this once locked up golf course into an open space for the wider community to enjoy. And an officer went on our behalf to speak at the meeting in which that decision was made. And as part of that promise, we committed $1 million towards the project. It was not specified, but that was a commitment we made back in 2018. And I know that we have not fulfilled on that as of this point. And I know that a lot of the reasons that we brought, Councillor Gross brought it at the time, was due to the great efforts of our community in letting us know how important this project would be and what it would mean for them. And that was before a pandemic hit. So I want to apologise for the delay, and I want to apologise that this is not the full amount that was originally put aside. But in good faith, I bring this motion to, and this contribution to the amount of $350,000 for Bayside Council to acknowledge a number of things. To acknowledge the huge amount of planning in those early days and consultations and early works that happened around the flood mitigation and the general what the park could be, and council officers and councillors and our community, even though we were on the other side of the municipal border, were very involved in. This amount is also to contribute to the detailed design of the wetlands and also for the future amenity of our residents, and noting that there is current amenity even in its open space state. And also this contribution is for the enhancement of biodiversity, which, as we know, like water, does not recognise municipal boundaries. And for any improvements in biodiversity across borders, it only enhances our own local one. Recently, I got an email from one of our residents who used to see butterflies in Elwood and no longer sees butterflies, and was asking us to consider planting 4 butterflies in specific spots in Elwood, which I think would apply across the municipality. So if we can encourage biodiversity improvements and enhancements in Bayside, it will definitely have benefits in our municipality. This contribution also goes a small way to highlight what I just asked questions about, the huge possible pollution reduction to the bay. So at best possible case, it could reduce, I think it's 1,600 kilograms per year to the bay, and currently our targets are 2022 to reduce that up to the year 2028. So we could almost, you know, in 2 years' worth, these wetlands could reduce, hit our 2028 targets in 2024 or whenever it actually is constructed. And that is valued, as Melbourne Water values it, at $10 million a year. So we may not get that maximum amount, but even if we get half, even if we get a quarter, even if we get the tiniest amount, we are getting a huge reduction to the bay, which our residents swim in, just like the residents of Bayside. And I think this small contribution goes a long way to helping, our tiny little bit to helping achieve that outcome. So whatever it is, if it's the maximum, I would be so happy. But if it's not, it's still a darn good bang for your buck. So in conclusion, I guess I just want to say that I hope my fellow councillors support this. Getting on council in 2016, I know the 3 ward councillors in Canal, it was all about flooding and drainage, and this was a really big step. And then, of course, Melbourne Water coming on board to look further at what other flooding mitigations, big-scale ones, could be done, and also signing the MOU with other councils to have an Up Creek, an Elster Creek catchment view. And part of that agreement with the Elster Creek catchment was to work with each other and contribute where necessary to deliver outcomes across all of them, including one of the ones was a planning scheme amendment review in giving money towards the review in Glen Ira, because we know downstream if they improve it, their catchment up there or their planning scheme might reduce the water that gets to us in Elwood. So we agreed to this MOU. Our community wanted us to take on this MOU. This park is a result of community and 2 councils working together. And I'm hoping that you will support this motion in order to honour that commitment we made back in 2018. I acknowledge that we are still doing the flood mitigation work business case with Melbourne Water, or they are doing it, and there is still a long way to go. But I think it would be remiss of us to not follow through on the commitment that we made to community and Bayside back then. So I'm asking you to support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Crawford. Deputy Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. I want councillors, particularly those councillors that weren't on the last council, to really consider some things when we think about why we are in this partnership, why we have committed to this. And I know that there will be, probably at least one councillor here who will say we should never spend money outside our municipal borders. But there was a reason that we did so, and that's that the future of that area of Elsternwick Park North as a nature reserve was not assured as a nature reserve. There was a big debate going on at the time about whether it would be retained as a golf course or have some other purpose or become a nature reserve. And that was very much up in the air. And in fact, the local community had to push against some intransigence on the council at the time in order to get that. And luckily they did, because I think the current Bayside Council is now incredibly proud of what's come so far and what is still to come. Part of what made Bayside make that decision to go with the nature reserve was advocacy from the City of Port Phillip and from our community. And that included us eventually making a contribution or making a budget allocation for a contribution. And based on that partnership that we made with Bayside, which was advocacy, some promises of funding, and the general partnership that we formed around Elster Creek with both Bayside and also two other councils, we created this the kind of relationship where Bayside made specific investigations and changes in their master planning process to accommodate us, things they didn't have to do, rabbit holes they didn't have to run down, except for things that we were interested in pursuing or looking at. And that was because they felt, this is a reciprocal partnership and it's best to be able to work together on this sort of stuff. So we have already, received some benefits in that, some of that work has been done there to investigate things that we thought were important to investigate. I'd also point out the huge benefits that our local community have already reaped from the Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve project. Like I've said to a couple of councillors today, when I talk to people, Elwood people, about, and I ask you, what's the biggest good thing you can think of that Port Phillip Council has done for you lately? And they say, the Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve, and I have to say, well, that wasn't actually us. That was Bayside Council. But it's the first thing that comes to mind. It's the first thing that comes to mind because that's the park they use. That's the benefit they get from it. That's where they take the kids. That's where they enjoy the nature and the biodiversity and all of the wonderful amenity that comes from that, right? So they wouldn't name any other things, basically. So that benefit is clear already, and particularly over COVID, the ability to be able to go through and walk through that area was massive. We've also seen through citizen science, through the Eco Centre and through other individuals that there have been big biodiversity gains already, and obviously the project's not complete, but already there are big biodiversity gains in that Elsternwick Park North area, which is a benefit that does that. Funnily enough, flora and fauna don't respect municipal boundaries as strongly as we do, and in fact, most people don't really care so much about those lines on a map either. But those gains have been recorded and are noticeable. So those are the things that are part of this project that are so important to our community that go far beyond just flood mitigation, although flood mitigation is important as well. So I just want councillors to note that it didn't always have to go this way. It only went this way because of the contributions that we made and the partnership that we developed with Bayside. And now it's at a point where I think we need to sort of put our money where our mouth is and strengthen that relationship. We're already reaping benefits. We can reap far more, as Councillor Crawford has noted, and the door is open to even more than that. So that's why I'll be supporting this motion, and I really urge other councillors to do so as well.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Baxter. Who else would like to speak to this motion? Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm old enough to remember the floods of 1955. I sat on Dad's shoulder as we walked part of the way down Glen Huntly Road and people rowed their canoes past the tennis courts. And I've watched the various flood mitigation schemes over the years. The first, Melbourne Water's predecessor, the Board of Works canal went in. I can remember as a child playing down at the golf course where all you could do was hide golf balls because there was nothing else to do because it was a pretty sterile environment. And when I look at what's happened and what's blossomed over there in the last 18 months, I just wish I could start my childhood all over again, because what's happening up there is an amazing amenity in terms of both our community as a public amenity, in terms of flood mitigation, in terms of water purification. There are just so many things that are happening there. And when you go up there now, I'm seeing water birds that I've never seen before in Melbourne in those new lakes there, so it's a fantastic environment. I've also spoken to some of our colleagues at the Bayside Council, council officers and councillors, and they would like to see us as partners. If you're not a partner, you have much less chance of influencing someone. We've had influence because they've seen us as partners. If we don't continue our partnership or we make a token contribution to a partnership, we won't be considered partners and we'll lose our influence. And it's a really important influence that we have, because so much of our council documentation talks about the things that we want to do that are actually going on in the Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve. If you go to Act and Adapt, and it's an awkward document to read through, but if you go through and look at the bits and pieces in there, you'll see a lot of the things that we're setting out to do, we're going to achieve through what's happening up in the Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve. If we don't support this, we're letting our colleagues in Bayside know that, oh, we'd love you to do stuff, but we're not particularly interested. We're telling the people of Elwood, look, we're not particularly interested in flood mitigation. We're not particularly interested in looking after water quality. Look, there's an amazing amenity up there, and it's going to get better, but we're not going to do anything to help it. And as Councillor Crawford said, if you want to see a butterfly, you probably need to go to the Royal Melbourne Zoo and look at the butterfly enclosure there, because you're not going to be seeing them in Elwood. So we have a chance to send a very clear signal to all of the people in Port Phillip, but particularly the people of Elwood, that we're really, really serious about addressing climate change, about improving our environment, about providing a fantastic public amenity, about mitigating the effects of climate change through flood mitigation, through improving water quality. There are so many positive things in this. And the previous council made a very good faith gesture, set aside a particular sum of money, and this motion is saying we're giving money to Bayside Council, and I think we've set 320k, am I right, Councillor Crawford? But we're also saying the rest of the money that we set aside there, we're keeping for all of those important actions, for all those things like flood mitigation, improving public amenity in the Elster Creek catchment area, and that may well be working very closely with the Bayside City Council. So we're not turning to Bayside and saying that's all you're ever going to get from us. We're saying we're serious about improving the area, and we'll be looking to see what we can do with the remaining funds that we're not committing tonight to improve the amenity of Port Phillip, and in particular the Elster Creek catchment area. So once again, I commend this to all councillors.
Any further speakers on the item? Okay, Councillor Clark. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. The original $1 million that was allocated. Yeah. The original $1 million.
And maybe put the level up a little. Not working? That's right. That's the internal camera. You don't have to duck for that one. Do you want to just test it out one more time, Rhonda?
Hello.
There you go.
We happy now?
Just go. You just start talking. Yeah.
I'll try again.
Yep. Great.
So, for the third time. The original $1 million in 2018, which is over 4 years ago, under a different council with different funding challenges, was around ensuring that Elwood flooding would be mitigated, and it's a massive issue and a key concern for all Elwood residents like myself. This has been mitigated now by Melbourne Water's determination to increase the capacity of the Elwood diversion drain. The original council officer's motion allocated $80,000 to contribute to a business case and design for the wetland stages of the park. From this design, the City of Port Phillip can participate and develop a business case and then determine what value can be provided to the City of Port Phillip residents with the costs versus the water savings or irrigations of the parks known and developed. A business case is an established process to determine how to spend residents' valuable money wisely. This motion allocates money with no fundamentals or proper cost estimates, so it's hard to understand if it's damn good bang for buck, and it does not provide any understandings of what City of Port residents are getting for this $300,000, except maybe some butterflies. The allocation of the costs have headings but have no substance behind them. The core funding of $1 million is diminished by this motion and reduces the options for councils to consider once the appropriate business cases are completed. I'm fully supportive of us looking at how we can harvest water and reduce costs on what we spend on water and use that water wisely, but that needs to be based on proper fundamental cost estimates. As an Elwood resident and councillor, I have a responsibility to spend ratepayers' funds wisely, as well as assist in flood mitigation for Elwood residents, which is a serious natural risk in my neighbourhood and in my very street. However, this motion, the rest of this motion that considers items other than flood mitigation should be evaluated like all other spending requirements and pressures that we have in the budget, and for that reason I won't be supporting this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. Last call. Councillor Bond.
Councillor Baxter's right, I won't be supporting this because it's not in our municipality, and I've been consistent the whole way through with every time this has come to us over the last probably 5 years now. You know, maybe a wonderful project, it probably is a wonderful project, but it's in the city of Bayside, and it's my expectation that they will look after this particular space because it's been allocated by the state government for them to look after. You know, we've got numerous projects going on, even in Elwood. We're about to spend somewhere between $40 and $50 million on the Elwood foreshore. I was at a meeting the other week that Bayside councillors attended. Bayside councillors lobbied us for outcomes on this particular patch of grass, but at no point in time would I expect them to come to us and say, oh, look, in order to get my outcome, here's some money for you guys, because it's our patch, it's our problem to look after. I go round our municipality and I look at Albert Park. It's exactly the same situation as this. It's no less worthy. We've got sporting clubs in Albert Park screaming for funding for new buildings and funding for new ovals and funding for lighting. And we've consistently said to them over the years that we can't help you because we're not the committee of management for your particular area. That's Parks Victoria. Parks Victoria is the group you need to go to and get your funding for that particular area. And this is no different to that. If we start funding things that we're not responsible for, that other levels of government or other councils are actually responsible for, we will have nothing left to spend on our residents, such as Albert Park Bowling Club want a refurbishment of their pavilion. Port Melbourne Baseball Club want a new baseball diamond. There's lots of things in our area where groups that we are actually responsible for are coming to us saying, I want money from council to spend on this, and we say, oh yeah, we haven't really got enough, or it's costing too much, or well, maybe next year we'll put it in the budget, or the year after that, you'll get funded in some point in time down the road. And I think that's irresponsible of us to do that. Our residents expect us to take care of our particular area, and I don't believe this is doing that. We've got these 7 kilometres of beaches that are used by every one of Melbourne. Like all of Melbourne comes down to our beaches. But I don't expect contributions towards the upkeep and maintenance and the building of our beaches from City of Glen Ira, the City of Stonington, because we provide a beach service to those particular cities. We've been blessed with being allocated the beaches. We've been blessed with being allocated our area. And I think we should stick to our area and just look after our area ourselves and not and not spend our hard-earned ratepayers' money in other councils, as worthy as the project may be and for all the benefits that may come from this particular area. There's enough in our own patch that we need to look after. There's enough in our own patch that we need to fix. And if we're going to change our approach, that we start to fund areas we're not responsible for, well, let's open up Albert Park and let's give some relief to those sporting clubs for the terrible state of the buildings they're currently in. Let's start funding those if we've got $1 million that we want to give to a group to get a benefit for our community, for an area we're not responsible for. So, as I said, I don't support this. I think, not ours to do. It's good luck to Bayside. I wish them all the best. But certainly, I don't think any City of Port Phillip funds should be contributing to this.
Thanks, Councillor Bond. Councillor Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you. I can see both sides that we're presenting tonight. This is definitely a compromise from the partnership that was agreed before I was on council. And I can see that that Bayside would be disappointed even in this amount, just because you say, oh yeah, let's go, and then you back out when you hear that our flooding has been mitigated a bit by a different project to back away for the whole thing isn't necessarily the right answer either. So providing a little bit of a contribution, I think, is the right thing to do, because the amenity and the biodiversity, all the benefits that we're getting is right there on the edge, and partnership does seem to be the right way to go forward on projects like this that we have a lot of benefit from as well. Up here in Port Melbourne, we have Westgate Park just around the corner, and it has been a blessing. And it is amazing to see what that was before to what it is now. And I can see the potential of this one. It's a much smaller site, but you rarely get an opportunity like this to see nature come back. And so I really support the idea, and that's great. And Bayside's putting in a whole lot more, and we're right there on the boundary to get a lot of the benefit. I personally need to know a bit more about this business case and how it's going to come back to know what that $600,000 is going to be used for. But for right now, until I have that information, having it sit there, or until something else comes that we might need to move it, I'm okay with that. But in general, I see both sides. It's a bit of a compromise, but I will be supporting this tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Consolo. Anybody else? Final call. Okay. All right. Yeah. Councillor Copsey.
I haven't caught up after the long weekend. Sorry, moving a bit slow. Well, I just wanted to thank Councillor Crawford for bringing this alternative motion tonight. I also want to acknowledge the work done by officers. I understand the logic that was behind the figure put forward in the original officers' motion. However, I share Councillor Crawford's very eloquently stated beliefs that we're already seeing far more significant benefit from this project in the city of Port Phillip, and I think it is time for us to actually make good on at least a portion of what we have notionally put aside for this project in previous years. I do also want to take the time to thank the previous council in Bayside for the amazing work that they did in advancing this project, as well as the current council, and for carrying that forward and seeing this vision really start to materialise. It's going to be such a fantastic asset for both municipalities, and I think it's really going to be a draw card. I think we're going to see a space here that is worth coming to visit. It's going to be of regional significance, I'm sure, by the time that it's finished. And, if we're already seeing nature return to these spaces and people utilise them when they're not even half finished, we're going to see huge benefits in future. I've always been one to point out the greatly improved access parts of the Masterplan as well, which is something that we rarely talk about in this discussion, but the improved bike paths, the improved access to that area for people of differing abilities and families, I think is going to be an excellent outcome as well. So, look, I just endorse what's been said about the benefits of this project to people within our municipality. And just speaking on some of the points that have been raised by members of the community tonight, and the issue that we're facing in the City of Port Phillip, where some of the moves that we were hoping to make in order to realise the very important water quality and flood mitigation targets that we set in our water sensitive cities strategy haven't come to fruition. And that was a really disappointing thing to go through during the last term of council. Some of those big moves that we were hoping to make, like Albert Park Stormwater, haven't proved to be feasible. So, speaking as Councillor Consolo pointed out about the rare and excellent opportunity that this site offers to realise some of those benefits in a different place, I'm really keen to see us continue to participate with Bayside in those explorations. I would personally prefer that we were seeing that 600,000 continue to be allocated against this specific project. However, I understand the questions that councillors are rightly asking about, is it going to be the one that produces the flood mitigation and water quality benefits that we might see for this catchment, or are there other opportunities? Personally, I would prefer to stick with the horse that we're riding until we see something better come along, but I'm satisfied that that 600,000 is there and has some points that we're looking to realise from the project as it heads into the future, and that council will continue to consider how we take this partnership going forward. Just once again, really thank you very much to all of the passion that's come through the community to see this project get to the stage that it's at today. I think it's going to be an absolutely beautiful vision once it's realised. I remain deeply committed to it, and I'm glad to see us taking what I hope will be a positive step in the right direction this evening, thanks to Councillor Crawford's motion, which I'm happy to support.
Thanks, Councillor Copsey. Okay, let's ask the mover of the motion, Councillor Crawford, to close.
Thanks for everyone's words, and yeah, thank you to all the officers for all the work that's gone over these last 4 or 5 years to get to this point. If I ran a poll on one of those local Elwood and Ripponlea Facebook pages, I tell you what, I know that contributing a small amount of funds to help realise this project that is Elsternwick Park Reserve, I can tell you the result would be overwhelmingly yes. When we did made that small contribution for free access to Ripponlea Estate for our municipality and residents, that was the most popular post, I think, in the last 4 years that we made. People want access to quality open space in an area where lots of people live in flats and don't have that open space. And even if you do have a home and a yard, you still want quality open space. It is what helps us keep us sane in this, crazy world. So I know that this contribution would be supported widely by our community, because they're the ones that told us that they wanted us to give $1 million to this. I do want to also point out that at the point when we made the commitment, it was prior to Bayside deciding to not renew the lease of the golf course, that a big part of it was that if they hadn't made it a nature reserve, I don't think the conversations would have happened with Melbourne Water about digging it out and being a flood retarding basin. And even would we have got to this point where Melbourne Water is doing a business case for doubling the diversion drain? I don't think so, because that was not on the table unless Bayside made the decision to open that golf course up to be public open space. So in some ways, this commitment to the 5 principles that we made the commitment of in 2018 was part of the catalyst to getting that decision, to getting Melbourne Water. So we would not be here having any opportunity for a major flood mitigation project in this end of town. That has not happened. When was it, the 50s, you said, Councillor Martin, was that first diversion drain due to I'm pretty sure, the Day family. So this is that other next moment in time. What's different about this to some of the other examples mentioned, like Albert Park itself or the foreshore, is that we didn't have a motion and we didn't make a commitment to any of them for $1 million and are now trying to take that back. So that's very different. We publicly pledged that helped bring on the Elsternwick Park that is, and possible this project in flood mitigation with Melbourne Water for Elwood. Again, possibly, if this project finally comes through, a game-changing flooding mitigation project. And that was on the back of our commitment from $1 million. Now, I'm aware that we have had changes and Melbourne Water's doing that business case and we're a few years down the track, and that's why I'm only bringing the partial amount that I'm asking you to support tonight and keeping the $600,000 remainder for only works within our side of the municipal boundary, for infrastructure works on our side of the boundary. I think the thing I forgot to mention in my first speech is our water harvesting. The possibility, the extra 100 megalitres of water that we could get could help fund huge amounts of our potable water required to keep our parks green, and we're not in drought right now, but there will become a time soon where we will be. And that water could be the saving grace for having green open spaces, or as much as possible. So not only does this park help us deliver and beyond our water pollution or water quality targets and legislative requirements, it also could help, will help us achieve those potable water targets, obviously with further work. So most of this money is still staying for specific works on our side of the fence, if that's the way you want to look at it. This small amount is going to contribute to the huge amount of planning, the 4 or 5 years of work that Bayside Council has put into it, and the spade has been dug, the chain of ponds are almost ready. This is the next stage. Our community wants this. This commitment of money was what got us to this point, and which has got us a flood mitigation project or possible project on the table. So I urge you all to vote for this. I think that's where I'm just reading my little notes that I did that. But I know that this community is particularly passionate about climate change and sustainability and open spaces and preserving nature and biodiversity. And you look everywhere, we are a very lucky municipality with our amazing foreshore and planting and whether it is from Alma Park down to Westgate, which is just again outside the border. But our community loves living here because of its beauty and its access to open, quality, open space. So I ask you, councillors, to please support this small contribution of a commitment we made 4 years ago to give $1 million to Bayside to deliver just that.
Thanks, Councillor Crawford, for closing. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Yep, I'm sorry. I think it's clear. Those against? Councillor Crawford has called a division, so that motion passed, but we'll call a division. Ask you to vote again, councillors. All those in favour? So in favour is Councillor Copsey, Councillor Consolo, Councillor Martin, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Baxter. Those against is Councillor Bond, Councillor Sirikoff, Councillor Pearl and Councillor Clark. That motion is carried. Let's move now to item 13.1, which is the Audit and Risk Committee biannual report. And thank you to Rachel Russell for being the primary officer on this one. Any questions of the officers, councillors? Okay. Go ahead. Happy to move, Councillor.
No, it was actually a question.
Oh, go ahead, yep.
I just wondered if there's any high-level insight, and this I haven't flagged prior, so apologies if it needs to be taken on notice, but I remain concerned about the huge climate risk that our city faces as a low-lying municipality, and wondered if the climate risk and risk to not only council assets but property in the city of Port Phillip has been considered by the Audit and Risk Committee, and if there's a short summary that can be provided.
Thanks very much. Happy to take that. And Councillor and Kylie Bennett will answer that for us. Thanks, Kylie.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, the Audit and Risk Committee received a meeting. I'm not sure that it was the last one, but certainly within the last 12 months, an update from our Head of Sustainability and Climate Change with respect to the risk that the municipality faces as a Bayside municipality, but also some of the work and efforts that Council is undertaking, as well as the legislative obligations that are before Council. Certainly the Audit and Risk Committee has a workshop in May each year to help inform their forward audit program, and my understanding is that they are quite keen to have a further, more detailed discussion based on that presentation they've seen previously as well. So yes, they are very interested, and it's certainly an item that's on their agenda.
Thanks, Kylie, for the answer to that question. Any further questions? All right, Councillors looking for a mover of the motion here. Thank you, Councillor Sirikoff, and thank you, Councillor Copsey. Councillor Sirikoff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to very much thank the committee members of the Audit and Risk Committee. They've put in many, many hours and reading many, many documents. And they raised, and the committee members, the 3 independent committee members, did raise great questions and requested many reports to fill in those questions. There were many topics that have been raised, these covering such items as Tech 1 financial controls, the new Victorian management, electric line clearance requirements, also the audit and compliance testing for topics such as cybersecurity, compliance framework, contractor engagement and councillor expenses, and child safety in the workplace. So that's just a few of the topics that have been brought to the audit and risk, and I would like to thank all of the contributions that have been brought forward to those committee meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sirikoff. Councillor Copsey, you don't wish to speak? No. I'll speak quickly just to do what I always do and thank the members. So thanks Councillor Sirikoff, Councillor Crawford, who was on the committee for a big part of this period. It's a very important and thankless task, and we're in a great debt of gratitude to you both for serving the council in the way you do on this committee, so thank you very much. Councillor Sirikoff, would you like to close? Okay, put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. And let's move to 13.2, which is the status of council decisions and questions taken on notice recorded by council 1 October 2021 to 1 December 2021. Oh, sorry, pardon me. I've got a little cheat sheet here that's got 1 December, so thank you for the... Oh, we need to move an amendment. If you could change to 31 December, that would be great. No worries. Anyway, any questions on this report, councillors? I'm happy to move that once the change is put up, and Councillor Baxter will second it. There we go. That's all good, isn't it? Yep, that's all good. Thank you. I don't wish to speak. Councillor Baxter, you wish to speak?
Yeah, just briefly to remind anybody watching that nothing can really happen in council except in decisions made at council meetings, basically. So if you go through this status of council decisions and questions taken on notice, and you go back through, I don't know, the last, 4 of them, you can look at every single decision we made over the last year and where we're at with it. It's a really great way to hold us to account, and I encourage anybody who is interested in the decisions that we make to hold us to account that way.
Thanks, Councillor Baxter. Anybody else? Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Let's move now to item 13.3, which is S6, the instrument of delegation, council to members of staff, rather. And thanks again for Rashley for being the primary officer on this one. Any questions? No. Looking for a mover. I'm happy to move, and Councillor Copsey will second. I don't wish to speak. Councillor Copsey, do you wish to speak? Anybody else? Let's put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Let's move now to item 13.4, which is the road discontinuance and sale of roads policy update. And thanks to Emma Murdoch for being the lead officer on this one. Any questions of officers, councillors? Go ahead, Councillor Copsey.
Thank you. And apologies, again, I haven't given a heads up, but I just wanted to confirm something. So I understand from the report this is relatively minor and not changing overall the general intent of our policy. It's more around updates and corrections. And previously, often when we consider a road discontinuance and sale at council, we will get the question as councillors as whether we have considered if the road is required for some other public purpose before any sale is considered. So I just wanted to seek confirmation from officers that that remains part of our practice following this update to the policy.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Through you, Mayor.
Lachlan. There we go. Thank you. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, that is certainly still part of the policy. There is a section in there of the requirements that we need to go through in considering retention of roads.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Crawford.
I have a question for, that is probably seemingly simplistic, and I should be able to answer in my head, but how do we get landlocked or road, like parcels of land that we then have to maintain? How do we get access? I just don't quite know, because it mentions in the report that we are trying to get rid of some of those ones, particularly the ones that we've got locked in. How did they come to be, or do we have many of them?
I'll go Lachlan Johnson in the first instance.
Through you, Mayor, Emma Murdoch might be able to provide an example to Councillor Crawford's question.
Let's turn that level up a little bit if we could. No, the level on Lachlan's microphone. Emma, if you could add some context to Councillor Crawford's question, that'd be great.
Yes, through you, Mayor. We do have a small handful that we know of landlocked roads, and we believe these have come to be just through the road discontinuances that have occurred during the past that hasn't quite considered the full length of the closure of that particular road, which has landed us in these landlocked situations. We have just updated the policy just to make sure that that is called out, to make sure it doesn't happen going forward.
Thanks. No further questions, councillors. I'm looking for a mover of the officer's recommendation or something else. Councillor Copsey to move and Councillor Martin to second. Please go ahead, Councillor Copsey.
I'll just thank the officers for their work on this. We do have a very dense municipality and, land is always at a premium, so it's timely for us to make sure that this is updated. I note that it hadn't been updated for many years. I appreciate the work that's gone into bringing this to us and the thoroughness of the report.
Thanks, Councillor Copsey. Councillor Martin doesn't wish to speak. Anybody else wish to speak to this? And Councillor Copsey, I presume you don't wish to close. All right, councillors, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Let's move to item 14, which is notices of motion. And we have one notice of motion tonight, councillors, and that is item 14.1. And it's a motion raised by Deputy Mayor Baxter in relation to welcoming cities. And the predominant officer answering questions on this evening will be Tony Keenan. The motion's been published. You've all read it. Do you have any councillors? Do councillors have any questions of the officers or, frankly, the mover of the motion in relation to the motion? Okay, no troubles at all. Councillor Baxter, would you like to move your motion, please? Again, you feel free to read it. It's pretty short, but you don't have to because it's in the.
It is short. I might as well read it, but thank you, Mayor. The motion is that Council 1.1 commit to join and participate in the Welcoming Cities Network at free member status. 1.2 authorise the Mayor and CEO to sign and submit the Welcoming Cities commitment form to the Welcoming Cities Network. 1.3 in agreeing to become a member of the Welcoming Cities Network, support greater understanding of how Council might strengthen its capacity to work alongside the many cultural groups living within this community and support a more cohesive approach to migration, settlement and belonging.
Thanks, Councillor Baxter. And just asking for a seconder, and I've got Councillor Copsey seconding the motion. Please feel free to speak to your motion, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. So, As some may know, I'm a Council's delegate on the Multicultural Advisory Committee, on Council's Multicultural Advisory Committee, and there has been an ongoing conversation with that committee about the Welcoming Cities network, the Welcoming Cities framework, various sort of accreditations that you can get that when it comes to making our municipality a welcoming city and one that is able to provide services to people of many different backgrounds in order to make them feel welcome. And I'll note that that our council plan has this, as a focus in terms of our community feeling safe and welcomed and accepted for who they are. So the suggestion was made by the Multicultural Advisory Committee that that council could join the Welcoming Cities network, which has different tiers of membership. One of which is a free membership that doesn't cost anything for the membership. Now, it doesn't get as many benefits as the paid membership, obviously, but there would be quite a lot of benefits, particularly in terms of our ability to benchmark against other councils and learn from other councils, some of which are doing really great work in terms of dealing with the issues that you can have from new migrants might have to deal with particular types of issues in cities and how they can feel welcomed and accepted, or it might be long-standing multicultural communities. So we can learn quite a lot by joining this network. We also will gain access to the ability to, if we wish to, pay to gain accreditation on certain things if we wish to, but really this is just costs us nothing and gets us access to quite a lot of very smart people that are working in multicultural spaces across all sorts of different local government areas, and the benefits to council and the benefits to community are listed here. So I think that, being able to benchmark and getting access to that best practice evidence and examples of programs and approaches that foster inclusive communities jump out to me as being one of the main benefits here. And I'd just like to thank the Multicultural Advisory Committee and the chair, Georgina Tsalides, for their work on investigating this and working with our officers to get some good information on this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Baxter, and I'll ask if Councillor Copsey would like to speak to the motion. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Baxter, for bringing this, and thank you very much to the MAC for the suggestion. I just endorse what you've said in your comments, Councillor Baxter. I think that it's been a continuous theme, as it should be in a diverse city like Port Phillip, throughout our recent council plans, that we are a city that celebrates diversity and inclusion and where people belong in our city. And I think it's always good for us to be looking at ways that we can reflect on what we're already doing, and if there are ways that we can improve that, to certainly learn from other examples and learn from the great resource that we have within our diverse community as well. So it's very nice that there is a fantastic network available to us that is consolidating a lot of those learnings from across local government, not just in Victoria, but across Australia. I'm sure there is plenty that we can learn from experience that's already been tried out in other councils across the country. And I really hope that for the MAC, should this succeed tonight, I hope it does, that they find the benefit that they're looking for from the resources available, and certainly the benchmarking. I'll be really keen to hear in future if there's much we're already doing in this space, and I acknowledge the great work of officers and previous councils. But if we can do more, I think that's certainly something we can consider. So thanks very much for bringing this.
Councillor Consolo.
Thank you.
I will be supporting this tonight. I'd like to also acknowledge the great work we're doing in this space, and it's a two-way street that we can offer what we know and add that to other councils and learn also what they're doing. So I agree with the benchmarking and comparing notes. At our citizenship ceremonies, it's amazing to see how many different cultures there are. But those people have been here quite a while in Australia to qualify for citizenship. So sometimes we're looking at the spectrum of when people first arrive to citizenship and ongoing as they age in place and conflicts around the world. There's so much going on about being an immigrant, living overseas, an expat like myself, that are ongoing as well. This is really timely ahead of Cultural Diversity Week, so well done on that. And I look forward to hearing the benefits from if this gets up tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Consolo. Go ahead, Councillor Crawford.
I was going to mention the citizenship ceremonies as well. It's kind of those joyous moments of being a part of council. But the other area that I know, working in hospitality for over 15 years in St Kilda, the number of people that work in hospitality from around the world, not so much obviously in the pandemic, but the people that you'd meet from around the world who would come to work in this hospitality space, and most of them would live in the area as well. So it's definitely something wonderful that gets added to our community, and I think belonging, that sense of belonging, if there's anything that we can do better in this space, I think that's a great place to be looking, and I think by joining up to this we'll get access to more of that information, just as we just on the rainbow tick, and we look to make things more accessible and all of those different things. The more we can do to help people feel included and safe and welcomed. And I do notice that on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's number 3, belonging and love. So looking at what we can do as a council in that day-to-day space to help support people, like we have for a long time with the Jewish community, the LGBTI community, the Russian community, all of the different ones. So I think this is a great initiative to sign up to and look forward to where we can make improvements.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Who else would like to speak to the item? Councillor Baxter, feel free to close.
I'm all right.
No worries. Let's
put
the motion. All those in favour? That's carried.
Can I get a division?
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to do that.
Landed on that.
All those in favour? Councillor Sirikoff, Councillor Copsey, Councillor Consolo, Councillor Pearl, Councillor Martin, Councillor Crawford, Deputy Mayor Baxter, Councillor Clark, and all those against, and all those who wish to abstain. Okay, I'll take that. Councillor Bond as an abstention. Let's move now to item 15, which is report by Councillor Delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports from your exciting activities? Let's go. Okay, all right. There's Councillor Consolo. Go ahead.
I will give a big shout out to the council staff that put together the International Women's Day event on the weekend just been. It was an incredible event, both in performance and also what they put together. So thank you very much for doing that.
Great job. All right. Any urgent items of business, councillors? No, there's none. You sure? No items of urgent business. Okay. Well, let's go to 17, which is confidential matters, and there's no confidential matters tonight. Now, I just need to make a special announcement. I'm giving permission for the meeting to be recorded. That Rebecca Purvis, who left earlier tonight, this is the first meeting that we've all had in this town hall, but it's the last meeting she's had in this town hall for a little while because she's going to on maternity leave, and she has a forthcoming pregnancy to deliver, which is wonderful news. So we wish her all the very best. And Rebecca, thank you for your service and thank you for everything you do. It's important to recognise the wonderful service of all our officers, but we just want to make a special mention to Rebecca as she goes through that important milestone in her life. So congratulations, Rebecca. There being no further items of business, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, councillors, and thank you those of you in the gallery, particularly our new friend here, and Teresa. Well done. Good night, everybody.